And we are recording, so this is going to be the lecture for the part 2 lecture of CIT 162, lesson 4. We're going to talk about security features in iOS. We did talk a lot about, and that's something I should have been doing, and that's what I'm doing right now. We did talk a lot about access lists, and we're going to kind of go into a demo of access lists. As a matter of fact, since the lab is now posted and created, I can actually bring up the lab, and we can look at some behaviors there. And the second part of the lecture, we're going to talk about port security and privilege levels. Again, privilege levels are one of those things that it's not used a lot in the field, to be honest. Okay, I'm bringing up my virtual GNS box right now. It's not used a lot in the field because it's one of those things that it's not as easy as it seems. It's one of those things that when you first see it, you're like, oh, that's cool. I could just assign commands certain privilege levels, and then only that privilege level can execute them. But the problem is there's kind of like a subtree of commands, and it doesn't work the way you're supposed to work. It's a lot of fiddling, a lot of messing with it. Larger corporations might do it because they have a support staff, and they want their support staff to be able to show run but not edit, you know what I mean, edit certain things, or maybe they want them to be able to shut down an interface but not be able to change the VLAN of an interface, right, something along that line, or vice versa. Anyway, point is, larger companies could do that with a tiered help desk system, but it's a lot of time and effort to set it up. So, and even then, it's a lot of management too. But like any kind of privilege ladder, right? I mean, that's what we've been talking about in security. So we'll talk about it. We'll show you. I'll show you how it works. But we didn't really get too deep into a lab because, again, that would be like a practice. That practice would be a practice by itself. Essentially, it's a large thing. But I give you a quick little rundown of how to set it up. Okay. And if you want to play, you can play on your own. All right. So now that I did that, let me bring up GNS3 real quick. I brought up my virtual machine, and I'm going to load up my projects. There we go. And you're going to see it looks a little bit different when I eventually get it up on the screen. All right. So let's get started. We'll start with the website. Whoops. I'm on a different course because we're just talking about advanced security topics. All right, so let me share that screen. I'm going to share my Chrome, and we'll get started. So here are networks 3. We're going to be talking about lesson 4. We're going to finish up the lecture. As you see, I posted our last virtual lecture, and we'll finish up the slides here. Anyway, so real quick, a quick rundown on access lists, some takeaways before we get started when we actually show it in the wild. We have access lists are sequential from top down. So that's an important concept. And we'll see a little bit of that in the practice where, I mean, it's a checklist, right? You're just going down a list. And once you hit that item, the packet, I'm going to keep using the term packet, although you can argue session, or not session, but segment, because it can go up to layer 4. I'm just going to use packet because this is a Cisco class and everything's a packet to Cisco engineers, okay? It's only a terminology. Once that packet hits the criteria, either source IP, destination IP, source port, destination port, sub protocol like TCP, UDP, ICMP, or IP, whatever the criteria is, once it hits that criteria, it's going to get acted upon, okay? And then the processing of that access list stops. So anything below it doesn't get processed, right? So if you have a permit before deny, that permit is going to get acted upon, and then the deny will never be acted upon. Okay. There are different types of access lists. Essentially, what we're concerned about is IPv4. There's standard and there's extended. Standard is going to be 199 or 1 to 99 and 1300 to 1999. Extended is going to be 100 to 199 and 2000 to 2699. If you do it by numbered. In the practice, that was the big thing I wanted to get done. Is you're going to do one by the number and you're going to do one by the name. So you're going to try it both ways. So to show what it looks like if you do a name, you can also name it. If you do, you have to say what it is. Extended. This is an IP access list. It's an extended type access list, and its name is going to be example. Once it does that, then you're going into a a sub configuration mode, right? The EXT for extended end network access list. Okay, that's what that I believe stands for. Okay, but you're going to be in this sub config mode, and you can start putting in your line numbers. You don't have to put in line numbers. In the lab, we don't put in line numbers. They put them in for us. Embarrassing story, while I was setting up the practice, I was putting remarks in, and then I did a show, in this case, show IP access or show access list example, and the remarks weren't showing up, and I'm so distrustful of the simulator that I was like, oh, stupid simulator's not showing the remarks, when instead of going, wait, that's right, they don't show up when I do a show access list. They show up when you do a show run. When you look at the running config, that's where the remarks show up. They don't show up in a normal, we'll see that in a sec. All right, so right here, even if I put a remark in, it wouldn't show up here, but I would see it in the running config. All right, why they do that, I don't know, but that's the way they do it. All right, and then after we create the access list, you have to apply the access list. Until it's applied, it's not actually blocking or denying, it's not allowing or denying traffic, right? Until you assign it to a interface, it's not doing that. So when you do that, also you have to keep in mind in and out. You can apply it to the ingress of the interface or the outgress. So I was reading up a little bit on this because I'm just trying to see if there's a better way for me to teach it other than saying, I'm confused by it too. Someone had a phrase that I bumped into at the message box to help someone understand it, and it was called into the man in the box, into the man in the router box and out of the man from the router box, right? That's one way you can look at it, right? Is the traffic coming into the router or is it leaving the router, right? That's, again, there's no perfect way to understand this because you're flip-flopping things in your head, right? When things are outgoing, right, that source and destination, if you apply it to the outgoing interface, all of a sudden that source and destination are going to get flip-flopped. All right, that's what's going to happen. All right, so now that we talked about that, let me bring up the lab that we're going to have, and then from there we can see if there's any questions. All right, so let me bring this up. Actually, what I'm going to share is my whole screen. That way I can have the telnets. So this is the lab. I essentially took that demo that we had. This is still router 4.15 ink. This should say 4 ink. Is this what all the config got? I'm just curious. I ended up with lots of different projects because, and I was able to import it in before. Yeah, that's what it became. I was able to import it into my other laptop without having to change permissions. So hopefully that holds true for you folks too. Anyway, so it started off as 5 ink accidentally, and I went, oh wait, I'm in lesson 4, I'll make it 4 ink. So I've been going around fixing that. Anyway, so I kind of made it a little bit prettier. I put some IP addresses. As you can see, this is to help us understand wildcards. There's a lot of VLSM going on here, especially here in the user network. It's crazy, especially for the wildcard because it's a /18, so it's going to be in the middle of the third octet. This one here is a nice simple one. It's just we've cut the last octet in half. All right. But there's going to be a fair amount of that. When you do it in the lab, make sure you start up all the network devices first, because the router is DHCP server for all the workstations here. We have 4 different workstations: user 1, user 2, admin 1, admin 2, and those workstations need to get their IP addresses from the router. The switches are really comically underused. One VLAN, there's a single VLAN out. They're essentially dumb layer 2 switches, but in the lab or in the practice, we needed to do port security. So I had to use Cisco switches to eat up more memory, even though I debated not doing that. This one here didn't need to be it, but that's okay. I'll start these up real quick. And hopefully we'll get an IP address. I'm just going to bring up the auxiliary console, that way I don't eat up more memory on a VNC. So if I do it if config, I did get an IP address. This is set to DHCP, so that's a good thing. And just to test connectivity, I'm going to ping this web server over here, which is 192.168.0.1. testing connectivity. Oh, packets filtered. So because we already have access lists up, okay? We'll look at that in a second. Matter of fact, why don't I do that right off the bat? Let me kill that access list. So as you can see, it says packet filtered. You usually don't get that kind of information in the real world. That's a nice little thing in the simulator, is it'll tell you the packet's being filtered to help you troubleshoot. Let me start. Oh, I did start it. Let me console into this. All right, and I'm going to change this color scheme so it looks different. Unfortunately, the way Putty works is you have to open up a whole new session if you want to use the pre-built ones. So I'm just going to do this. I'll make it a really annoying blue. As we like. Okay, enough playing around. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Let me just give me a quick thumbs up if that text and the, okay, looks good. All right, yeah, I made the text a little bit bigger, so you're gonna have, it's gonna be annoying and kind of move down to the next one. So again, the username and password is right here. It's 4IncAdmin and pass44inc, which is not the best passwords, but you know, they'll work for this. So 4IncAdmin and then pass44inc. All right, so now we're in the router, and that access list that's being acted on right there with this, let me bring up this other router here. So you had, or the workstation. As you see my packets being filtered, let me show you what's going on here. I'll do a show run real quick. This hopefully will make a little bit of sense. If you look at the user network, which is right here, okay? The user network has an IP access 104 in, right? Access group. So there's an access list being applied that it's access list 104, and it's being applied at the in the ingress and the inbound, man in the middle. There's another access list. We won't look at that right now. So here's 104. As you can see, it has the remarks. So what I'm doing is I'm permitting echo reply. Yeah. Oh shoot! I just gave away an answer. Oh well. Anyway, that's. Oh, actually, I ended up not doing that extra credit. So there you go. We'll talk about that here. Anyway, so here's the access list. We're allowing clients to get a DHCP. That's a problem. You'll see it in the practice, which is pretty cool. But as you can see, it's allowed to go to the web page, right? But nowhere in here am I allowed to do an echo request. This is an echo reply. I'm allowed to reply to pings. And the reason why we have that is it's this weird situation where if I bring up the auxiliary console for this server, so this is the server I'm pinging. If I do an if config, my fingers haven't woken up yet. As you can see, this is the IP address I'm actually actively pinging, 192.168.0.1. And if I go ahead and ping, I forgot the IP of it. I think it's the first one it hands out, so it'd be 192.1. So ping 192.168.192.1. I can ping it, but it can't ping me. And that's because of this access list entry right here, right? The access list on the inbound, so it's going to be on this interface right up here, this interface E0/1. That interface right there is where the inbound is being applied. And what's going on, if we think through this process real quick, right? Oh, by the way, fun thing, I can actually show you the hits. If I go, if I do the show access list 104, notice I actually get hits, 8 matches, 30 matches, right? The 8 matches is from the DHCP request, actually. It allowed my DHCP request to go through. And these 30 matches has been my ping replies so far, okay? And if I went through and I brought up the VNC, I'll bring up the VNC and bring up the console. Here's the actual desktop for that workstation. If I go to that web page, 192.168.0.1, I get to see the awesome web page. This one, is this cached? Yeah, it was cached. Okay. Here's the awesome web page I built for you guys. Look at that. I spent a good 2 minutes on that. And it still says 5inc. It doesn't say 4inc. Shoot. All right, there's one 5inc that got by me. Anyway, so welcome to 5inc. I'm actually going to that web page, right? So if I go back and I minimize this VNC viewer and I bring up my access list and I do a show access list, you're going to actually see hits now. Those 8 hits that it took 8 packets for that web page to actually get thrown onto my web browser. 8 whole packets because it's such a loaded web page full of graphics. That's what you see here with the 8 matches. So that's pretty cool. You can actually see your matches, okay? And we're up to 88 hits with the ICMP because I've kept that running. But what's going on, if we talk our way through what's going on with this ping, if I ping from user 1, which is the one I'm in, right, and I go through the switch and I say, hey, I want to ping 192.168. Let me bring this down so you can actually see the networks. I want to ping 192.168.0.1, right? It's not on my subnet, so what do I need to do? I need to go to my default gateway. My default gateway for this network is 192.168.255.254. That's the router interface for this router right here, which I thought, oh, it is. That's right. All right. So, so it's going to hit this router. That's going to be part of the inbound, right? And it's going to sit there and say, hey, I want to ping, right? So it's going to get the right address. It says, hey, I am 192.168.192.1, and I want to ping 192.168.0.1. Because there's an access list applied to that interface, it's going to go down this list. And it's going to sit there and say, okay, well, host 000, that's not right off of that, not true. We got to permit TCP. Well, you're pinging, it's ICMP. Right off the bat, it's going to toss it. But we'll go a little bit farther. 192.168.192.0 with a wildcard bit mask of 0.0.63.255. Okay, so you fall within that range. You're in that range of IPs that are allowed through, right? And then you're going to 192.168.0.1. That's great. But yeah, this is TCP port 80. We're not going to allow that through, right? Or it doesn't match this criteria. You go down to the next line, right? Doesn't match this criteria. Go down to the next line. This is very close. ICMP, yep, you're in that range. Yep, you're going to the right place. It's for the entire network. Yep, that's fine. This is going to say, hey, go 192.168.0.0 with a wildcard bit mask of 127, which means the whole second or the whole first half of the 192.168.0.0 network. So that's everything from .1 all the way to 127, technically, although that'd be a broadcast, but 127 would be allowed through the access list, okay? But here's the problem. You're doing an echo request, or just simply an echo is what they call it in Cisco. This allows an echo reply through, so it gets dropped. Now, if I ping from the server doesn't have an access list here, okay? If the server says, hey, I want to ping 192.168.192.1, it's going to, again, hits default gateway. There's no access list there. The router routes it like normal. It's going outbound on this interface, so this access list does not get applied. It's only on inbound. So it goes outbound through this, hits user 1. User 1 says, hey, I got an echo request. I'll send an echo reply. It sends an echo reply, which then hits this part of the access list. So what ends up happening is the server can ping user 1, but user 1 can't ping the server, right? Again, keep in mind, it's because it's a two-way conversation, right? And the way this access list is set up is number 40 here allows the reply to go through, but it never allows the request to go through. So the server, when it pings, it says, hey, can you hear me? The reply actually is allowed to go back through this ingress right here on this router, okay? So that's the more advanced things you can do with an access list. In other words, I set it up so the server can ping the user, but the user can't ping the server, okay? Now, the fun thing is if I want to take all this off, or let's just say real quick, this is one of my favorite things to do, is let me get my blocked address, whoops. Which one is blocked here? From 192.1. Okay, that's from the server. I'll close that out. And this guy, yep, packet filtered. Okay, so there's the packet filtered one. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this access list, config T. Now here's the problem. This is a numbered access list, and I don't know of any way to get into the line number. If I do access list 104, I can't do a line number here. This is where I would like to do it, but I can't. So what I'm going to have to do is, I could just put it right at the end anyway. So if I do permit ICMP, I forgot the access list. Access list 104. Sorry, that was my kids trying to bug me. All right. Access list 104. And I'm going to do a permit. And I'm going to do, oh, I got someone raise their hand, or I just had this thing pop up. I don't know why. Oh, someone chatted. John, don't give out government secrets in this meeting. Noted. Access list permit. And we're gonna. I don't know if that was older or not. But ICMP. We're gonna permit ICMP. We're gonna do 192.168.192. I mean, again, I could just be a jerk face and do any here, right? Now that's one of the grand debates of a Cisco admin. I could just say any at this point, right? Because it's not no other IP address is going to get routed off my subnet. If my router gets a request from 1.1.1.2 to get off that subnet, it's going to say, whoa, you can't. I'm not routing. I don't know how to get back to you, right? Things are going to go crazy. I can't. So in a way, you're perfectly fine putting any. Just as good mojo or good practice. It's good to tighten this stuff down as much as possible, but then you have to play with wildcards, and people hate that. You have to remember, I think it was 63.255, and then we'll do it just to the host of 192.168.0.1, right? Again, I could write host, or I could go, I could say this specific IP address by saying 255.255.255.255. I'm making sure that's true in my head. No, that's wildcard. That says everything. Sorry. Other way, 0.0.0.0.0. It has to match this specific. So the host is saying the same thing as 0.0.0.0. Sorry, I had to catch myself. I forgot we're wildcarding. So this says it has to match 192. 0 says 0. It has to match all these bits have to match up to make 168. This third 0 says all the bits have to match up to get 0. I see your raised hand, Adam. I'll get to you in a sec. And then this other 0 says all the bits have to line up. There have to be 7 zeros and 1 bit at the end to make that a 1. So it'll match it exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
So in terms of this access list, you're about to type a subnet mask. I'm assuming you can't use a regular subnet mask.
No.
When making ACL, you have to use the wildcard mask, right?
Yes. So if I do a question mark right here, it says destination in wildcard bits. Non-negotiable. Welcome to Cisco.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or I could just put the keyword host, right? We have the keyword any and the keyword host. I'm trying to make our lives a little bit easier. Oops, it would have to go before it. But the nerdy way to do host is just put 0.0.0.0. And where I just got confused was I was thinking routes. And remember, it's reverse with routes. So 0.0.0.0 means literally anything. When it's wildcards, 0.0.0.0 means this specific IP address. Okay, it's just the flip side. And then we'll do equals echo. I think I just echo. Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh no, there is no equal. That's right. For some reason, ICMP got rid of equal. It's weird. So echo. And then I think I'm good. I can log it too, but we didn't really get into that. And then look at that magic. All of a sudden, I can ping it. Happens instantly, right? That's one of my favorite things to do in Cisco is I just get a continuous ping going, and I like, you got internet? You don't got internet. You got internet? You don't got internet, right? Now the problem is because 104 is a numbered access list, if I just put a no in front of this, it's not going to kill it because, and let me real quick grab that access list, do show run. I'm going to copy it. Because what's going to happen is if I put no access list 104, it's immediately gonna, I don't want that last one. I'm gonna just grab it. Okay, let me get back. If I do, watch this, if I up arrow and I say no on this one command, it won't get rid of that one access list. It's gonna get rid of the whole access list. Again, very unwieldy. And so that's why I copied and pasted it. Right now, if I went down there, look, notice access list 104 is gone. Because it just, when the moment it saw no access list 104, right, it deleted that whole access list. All right. So what I need to do is now put that whole access list back in, which luckily I copied it to memory and hopefully it works. There I go. And now we're back to where we were. Packet is now filtered. So if you do feel like you're being bullied at work and you're a network engineer, one thing fun to do is just keep a continuous ping going to people's workstations and take away their network and put it back together with access list. But anyway, it gives you a false sense of control and power. In today's modern world, that's a fun thing. All right. So that's my little, that was my quick little demo there. I thought that was helpful though, with again, the continuous ping. I know no one's going to sit there and say, oh, access list, I got this. This is boring, right? So another fun thing real quick is that echo reply was just for that. What I should have shown too was if I went and pinged the database server, it wouldn't have worked because it was going to that specific host, but it's, it's fine. All right. But that's an access list in general, right? The other access list I got on this router is for the users. So if I do a do show access list, and this is a named one. So if I do show access list, boy, it was called admin_ACL if I remember correctly. There we go. So here's the access list I set up for the users. Let me close out this, and I'm going to bring up a workstations. Again, it's going to be the same situation. I'll just bring up the whole console. This workstation can go to 192.168.0.1 and bring up the web page. Fantastic. But the users actually have some other abilities, like they can SSH and they can, which we can't test because those servers don't have SSH, and I didn't have the time to get SSH server up and running. But they can ping because we're allowing it, 192.168.0.1. So they can ping because they're administrators and they need to be able to ping the servers. And the way we're able to do that is with running out of real estate here. Okay, the way they're able to do that is with this command right here, or with this access list right here. Okay, admin ACL. Now if I go down and I do that show again, I should see hits. I don't, so why not? I thought I would see hits there. This is where we're talking about though. This, why won't I see hits in that? Show access list admin _ACL. Unless I didn't apply it yet. Have I not applied it? Show run. We're going to begin at what interface does this have? Sorry, I'm doing a little bit of troubleshooting. I might have unapplied it for some reason. 03. So we're going to begin at 03. Yep, right there. So good old troubleshooting. Let me go to config t int Ethernet 03. I'm going to do IP access group admin ACL. Bad thing here, they won't let me tab this out because it's a name. So I'm hitting tab right now and I can't tab it out. So I have to remember the whole name and spell it correctly and not have any typos. So that's often the gotcha. We're going to do it on the in, and that's what I need. So now I should be able to, well, now I should see hits. So if I ping there and I go back to do show access lists, whoop, I can't tab that out because of the do command, admin _ACL. Now I'm seeing hits. Okay. So now I'm going through that through that access list. All right. So what happened right there was I was pinging, I went to the web page and I was like, wait, I'm not seeing hits in the access list. So immediately I ran in my head, ran through the procedure. I'm like, I bet I know what happened. I never applied it to the interface. Now the fun fact too is if I screwed up and I reply, and instead of doing this, let me do a no on this command, and then instead did it to the outbound interface. By the way, that has no effect over here because I could continue to ping. If I put on the outbound interface, right, should be breaky. Yeah, now I'm not getting replies. Okay, the replies are eventually gonna time out here. I'm not being told it's filtered because what's going on is my request is never getting back to me. All right, but let me go back here and bring up my browser. I won't be able to get to the web page. So let me do a refresh. If I do a renew on this or reload, it's going to just sit here and hang. Okay. And that's because it's going on the outbound. So what's going on is when it leaves the router, it's applying this access list. So it comes in this way, fine, we'll let it in. But the moment it starts going out of it's going out of the router, it applies this access list, right? And it's going to sit there, say, okay, it's going out, right? So in this case, it's going out of this interface. So it lets it go, and it gets to the server. The server is going to reply back. And then when it goes out of this interface back towards the workstations, then it applies. And when it applies it, it's going to say, okay, cool. The source is 192.168.0 on port 80, but this is destination. That's not source, right? So that's why this access list all of a sudden magically doesn't work, right? Because I put it on the outbound, right? The source and the destination get flip-flopped, and these no longer are hits. Okay, does that make a little bit of sense, right? By flipping the out and the in, the source and the destination get flipped, right? Because what's going on is, again, just like before, when admin goes, hey, I want to hit port 80 on 192.168.0.1, it goes to hit port 80 to get that web page. We get the traffic because it goes through the inbound interface. There's no access list. The router takes it in, says, okay, cool, routes it out. Traffic starts coming back, but then it hits this and it starts going out of this interface. That's when that access list gets applied, because I made it apply to the outbound, right here. And so what happens is, because it's outbound and it's the reply traffic, the destination is the source, and the source is now the destination, right? Think of like a return package, right, in the mail. So let's take that out because that's now breaking things. We'll get rid of that. No. And we'll do IP access list in, and then magically, all of a sudden, let's again get our weak displays of power, our pathetic displays of power going. And no, that's because I just unapplied it. But if I do it in, I could continue to ping because my access list, show access list, is allowing it, and there's the matches to prove it. Okay. So I've set up plenty of complex access lists in my life. This is kind of what it looks like. I apply it, unapply it, reapply it. There's not a lot of users on, so I'm not disrupting their traffic too much, right? I test things out, and we're going to do a little bit of the practice too. We're going to have things break. The buzz phrase for our practice this week is "uh-oh, SpaghettiOs." So I keep making references to "uh-oh, SpaghettiO." You'll see it right off the bat. Oh, I should show that ahead of time. But if you go to practice 4.1, it is a lengthy one, and you can see all the links to uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, and they're just the commercials through the years, ending with the one I remember best as a kid. There you go. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. All right, so that's going to be the buzz phrase for our practice, okay? Because I'm trying to start to get you in the mode of, oh, wait, there's a mistake. Let me figure out what that mistake is, right? It's an interesting duality being a network administrator, because mistakes mean downtime, and downtime is bad, but you need to be able to think on your feet and figure, you know what I mean? You got a lot of complex things, and there are a few things in my life where I sat down and said, okay, I need to put my headphones on. No one needs to talk to me, because I'm focusing in on doing this, and access list was one of those things, right? Because polarity gets reversed. We got polarities already reversed with wildcards, right? We have a lot of things going on. So, you know, it was one of the things I had to think about, okay? Matter of fact, the other things I really had to think about, like policy-based routing, used access lists as well. So access lists became a running thing where anytime I touched an access list, I was like, okay, let me stop, let me think. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show real quick was, if we go back to our little demonstration here, editing. If I want to edit the named access list, life is much easier, right? What I do is I go into that named access list. So I'm in the interface right now. I do access lists. I got to do IP. I got to tell it what kind of access list. IP access list extended. And then I give it the name, which is already in existence. If I give it a name and I'm wrong, then I'll create a new one. So I got to be really careful about this, right? And then if I do a do show access list, or how about if I do a do show run, and then we're going to include the term admin ACL. So it'll filter out everything else. Well, I screwed that up. Oh, because that's right. I got to begin. I don't want to begin. Shoot. All right. So what I got to do, because you'll see why. I'll begin at ACL. Yeah. All right. So this is what happened. It names it here, but doesn't put them in the front. So I have it up and running though. So I'm in this access list and I do a do show. By the way, this is where do is a beautiful thing, because before this, what I would do is have multiple windows up. I have a TTY, multiple TTY connections up, and I have the access list in one telnet or SSH session, and I'd be editing it in the other SSH session. This is where do show runs beautiful. I can do it all in one window, right? Although I'll lose that as I keep typing. If I want to add something to this access list, there it is. What? Oh, there's no line numbers because this version doesn't have line numbers. So let me just do a do show access list and get the line numbers. There's my line numbers. So if I wanted to add something, for example, between 25 and 30, what I could do is I'm in it. So I just give it the line number. I'll do question mark, right? It's just line number right up here, sequence number. So I'll do 25. I'll stick it right in the middle of these two. I'm just going to say whatever, we'll do something quick here. TCP, we're going to do a host 192.168.0.129, going to the host 192. By the way, I could also start putting port numbers here. Oh, I didn't like, why did I like that? Oh, I didn't do a permit. Stupid. Permit, sorry. TCP, and then any, all right, we'll do any. By the way, I can also put port numbers here. So if I put like something equal 14,388, I'm guessing because these are, I can put port numbers here, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that, because if it's the source and I'm going out and making requests, it's going to have a dynamic, so I'll just do a TCP any equals, anyone can say anything about, let's find a fun, this is TCP, so let's just do a POP3, sure. So it's a terrible command line. I'm not saying you should do this in real life, but we'll put that in. So now if I do a do show access list ACL, notice I now was able to edit that line and put it in without deleting the whole access list, right? That's the beauty of named access lists. I can actually go in and take commands in, or I can take things out. No, that's terrible. And all of a sudden, now 25 is gone, right? That's a beauty. And by the way, this access list is in production, so I can go in and slip things into an access list in production, which is the beautiful thing about named access lists and line numbers. Okay. Now 104 actually has line numbers. I don't know if it's this version of iOS that's on our simulators. And I do have a vague memory in my life editing line numbers in numbered access lists. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but at least in this simulator, it's not a feature that's allowed. I spent a good 10 minutes trying to get that working. I just threw my hands up and walked away. So just keep that in mind. Okay. All right. I think I've blabbered on enough about this. Hopefully when you do the practice, again, doing it heads on, you're gonna create those access lists. And maybe I'll still slip in an extra credit question. We'll see. I want to give you guys some more chances for extra credit. I think on the exam, I'm going to have some extra credit too. But anyway, I'm blathering. All right. Any questions before we move? I know access lists are still like, what is this craziness? And believe me, you're never 100%. I was never 100% comfortable with the access list, right? Until I hit enter, or until I actually apply it and start testing it, do I fully trust my work? I have to see the work, right? Because access lists are kind of a very, it's hard to keep it all in your head, but hopefully by doing it a couple times, like you will in the practice, you'll get a little bit more comfortable with it. But any questions before I move on? Any like overarching, like I definitely don't get this issues. All right, let me get back to the slides, and I'm going to stop the whole screen share, and we're going to go into just the, where is it? Here it is. Google, or yeah, Google Chrome. Let's share. All right, let's get back to where we were. So access lists, how we deployed them. We talked about that. All right, let's talk about iOS privilege levels. So we've already been doing this. I slipped this in at the very beginning, perhaps in a more layered approach. Up until this point, we would just do enable passwords, the old school enable passwords, and secret enable passwords, which we touched on at the beginning of the semester. But since the very beginning, I taught you the local database users and the enable password side by side. It is far preferred to use the local database. If you remember what the enable password was, it was just a password to go to enable level. Now, what all that is the enabling is remember, what do we call and as we like to call it, the enable mode is called privilege exec mode. Okay, that's a clue as to how this is working, right? There's going to be different privilege levels. Okay, remember what we called before we went to enable mode, which most of us skip now because we use the local database to log in. But by default, I'm trying to remember what the symbol was. Before you do privilege exec, it's just
What is the greater than sign?
What's
right?
that? Yeah, greater
Isn't
than
it greater
sign.
than?
Thank you. Yes. So the greater than sign is the user exec mode. That is privilege level 1. Okay, and then if you remember, user exec only had a sub commands that it could do. There's only a certain number of commands it could do. That's what user exec privilege level is. Okay, if when we set up the local database of users, if we gave you a privilege level 1, you would only be able to do the things in user exec. You would never be able to go to enable mode, which is privilege exec. Okay. Now the way Cisco comes out of the box is it has 16 levels or 16 possible numbers, 0 through 15. Right. Really, we only use 1 through 15, but it's only set up to do 1 or 15. Right. By out of the box, it's set up that everything in the whole operating system either has a privilege level of 1 or a privilege level of 15. Right. That's just the way it's set up for simplicity. So we can change that though. We can go privilege mode and we can change the privilege level of a command. Okay. So what I was hoping to do in our lab was change this running config. And I actually set it up so you could actually have that. But ironically, if you did show run, it just came up blank, and because there's some kind of gotcha in the back end that you can execute the command, but you can't actually view the contents of the file, or there's some kind of gotcha. There's a workaround around it, but then you're using a different command, and so I just threw my hands up and said, all right, we're not going to do that in the practice. And that's kind of the point of this, right? I never worked at a place, I never consulted at a place that set up privilege levels, okay? Because essentially it's a house of cards and it takes a long time to set up. Now, ideally, if you do set it up, you can have multiple levels of support staff. And what we're going to do in our lab is we're going to set up a privilege level 3 user. So again, remember when we set up the local database, we use username, give it the username, privilege level, and then we're going to set up privilege level 3, and then we'll set a password for it, okay, for tech. What I was going to do was have it so they could look at the show running config. And they almost get there, and you can play with it on your own if you want. But the actual command to do that is in global config mode. You type privilege exec level 3, in this case, show running config. And you have to type out the whole command, okay? You can't tab it out, and you have to spell it correctly, okay? So show running config. Anyway, so if you execute this, then you'll actually see those commands. So let me real quick do a new share and look at the router again. I'll share out this this telnet session, and let me go back down. And if I do a show run, I think I still have some shrapnel left for me working on this. Yep, privilege level right here. So I was trying to, as a desperate Hail Mary, I try to do show interfaces as a command. But this is where it actually shows up, right? And by the way, the user I set up is up here. Where's my user? Here it is. So we're gonna set this up in the lab. We're gonna have a privilege level 3 account, okay? And then what I was trying to do was issue out some commands that they could do. Just one simple command, nice and simple. and it just, there's nothing simple about it. So I just said, you know what, I'm not going to spend time in this practice. So we're just going to create the account, and you're going to see what they can and can't do with that privilege level. Okay. But it's a way in order for you to give certain commands out to individuals, usually like a network tech, a less, a less experienced someone just doing some basic troubleshooting. Okay. You can also set enable passwords at every single privilege level. So if you weren't using the local database, you could sit there and say, what you can say is, I had multiple thoughts in my head there. I'm sorry. What you can do is you can sit there and say, if we have an enable password, you type in the first enable password, that gets you to privilege level 1. The second, enable password will get you to privilege 3, 6. Now you can tier them off. Okay, you can have a 15 level enable password and a 1 level password. Okay, that's what that's referring to. The other thing you can do is you can set lines to privilege levels too. The command's down here. Once this thing will disappear. I really hate this thing. You can set lines to privilege levels and use the show privilege to see the current privilege level. So you can still do that in the router here. So if we do show privilege, I'm going to be 15 because I'm in as admin. There I am. I'm in as the admin account, which is a privilege level 15. But you can also go into the lines. So if I go into line con 0, for example, and this is where you might want to do it and block people from getting into the console, right? I don't mind if you VTY into my switch or my router, but if you're going into the console, that means you're physically there, and that's where I'm a little bit more nervous. So I might do this at line con 0. And then I say, I think it's privilege. I'm going to, yeah, privilege. Oh, it's actually right down there. There's 2 of them. So I go privy, and I give what level. So only privilege level 15. Whoop, probably level. Yeah. And then 15. Only privilege. Now that I type this command, only privilege level 15s can go into the console. Okay. So fun fact: if I exit out, and then because this is technically the console, by the way, if I go in and I try to log in as that tech level, so I go for Inc. Tech. I remember the password. It was tech for Inc. Let me in. Okay. Show run. I can't show run because I'm level. If I do a show privilege level, I'm privilege level 3 right now. So I thought it would block me. That's what I do. What I get for doing a live demonstration. Oh, show privilege. I'm privilege level 3. So anyway, privilege is something that you could possibly use. You have to do a lot of playing with and experimenting to get it up and running. But it's a way to hand out different authentication to users, right? You can see right away Cisco engineers are not huge on authentication or authorization, right? This is really penny ante, like this is good security back in 1988, maybe 92, 95, right? After 95, this is kind of like, are you sure this is good security, right? This is not very good security. Let me just get through switchport and then we'll wrap it up. So switchport is, or port security, switchport port security is a protocol. It can only run on switchports. That's why it's part of the subset of switchport. Let me get my laser pointer. All right, it only runs as a function of switchport. So you do switchport port security. That enables it on the port. And that's really where you should start because then you can start changing settings, okay? So you have to enable it on a port first. Port security is now enabled. Now you can go in and start changing your settings, okay?
Sorry to interrupt real quick.
I'm sorry, Adam?
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you had transitioned back to the slides, but currently...
Oh, sorry. Thank you. You're still seeing it. Yeah, you did. Sorry. I forgot. That's what happens when you do a screen share. You forget you're off screen share. So you should see the slides now. Sorry about that. Yeah, so again, we did the privilege levels right here, and I moved on to switchport. So the first thing you want to do is switchport port security. It's a function of switchport. And then you can do things like set the max number of MAC addresses. So what this command right here says, switchport port security max 1. What this is saying is this is only allowed 1 MAC address. You can also set it up to do multiple MAC addresses and say, hey, you can have this MAC address, or this MAC address running on this port. So that can be fairly useful if you only have only five different laptops. You can go through and say, hey, I got these 10 ports set up through the office. One of these 5 laptops with one of these 5 MAC addresses is going to be plugging into this ports. Now, is this all high grade security? No, because MAC addresses are easily spoofed. But anyway, again, this is what we got in Cisco world. So I mean, it's, in a way, it's some level of security. We'll talk about that in a sec too, because of what we're able to do with this. So what we could do is we could add a MAC address by hand. We can sit there and type it in and say, this MAC address is allowed. So in this case right here, we're only allowing one MAC address. We could then say switch port, port security MAC address, and then we manually type in the address. So this would be the only MAC address that's allowed to go on that port. Or we could do this command called switch port security MAC address sticky. Either the current MAC address or the next MAC address that plugs into a port will be then recorded. You don't have to manually add it. It will just grab it and put it as the one MAC address allowed in that port. If you do multiple MAC addresses, like 3, and you do sticky, the next 3 MAC addresses will be remembered, okay? And then you have violation modes. The violation mode tells the port what it's gonna do if there is a violation, okay? It could protect. So what protect will do, will just tell the port, it'll just say, hey, if any other MAC address plugs into this port, just drop the frames from it, okay? Don't forward them off, don't look at your forwarding table, just drop the frames, okay? It won't update the security table. It won't tell you there's been a violation, and it won't send a trap, which if you have it set up to do traps, okay? Which we haven't really talked about yet, but hopefully that'll make more sense later on when we talk about SNMP, simple network management. Yeah, SNMP. Restrict tells it to do the same thing. It drops the frame. When I say ignore, I should say drop. It drops the frame, and then it will, however, it will trip an alarm. It'll sit there and say, hey, we'll send a trap if it's programmed to send a trap, the switch that is. But it will update the count, the security violation count that's inside the switch. We'll see that in a second. And then finally, the last one is the most extreme one, which will shut down. It shuts down the port. It goes in error stable mode. The administrator would have to go back in and re-enable that port. You're almost like punishing the user, right? Some user comes in and brings in their home laptop and plugs it in. It's going to shut down the port until you can come around to actually log in VTY into that switch and re-enable the port. Okay, and we're going to do that in the practice. I'm going to have you re-enable a port. You just do a shut no shut on the port, and the port comes back up. There's also a way to clear your error disables too, but shut no shut was the way I always did it. So if I go back to, let me share my screen real quick. Share screen, and I'm gonna go bring up this. Oh, that's my. There we go. Bring this up, and I think I had it set up here. So I'm gonna bring up the console for the switch here. Okay, as you see, I didn't really do a whole lot of config on this, but I did want to show you show port security. Okay, if I do show port security, oops, I must not save the config. So we'll do it real quick. So we'll go Ethernet 02. I'm going to config T in Ethernet 02. I'm going to do switch port security, turn it on. We run into this in the lab too. If you have it to negotiate, right now, technically these switch ports are set to, the switch port is set to negotiate. Do show, I think it might be the default, but I'll check there too. Oh, again, 02. Well, it just as auto do, yeah, because it's the default. But what we have to do is we have, port security will only run in access ports. It can only be set up to be switch port access ports, or ports that are set up not to be dynamic. So what you want to do is switch port access, or switch port mode. That's short for mode, access. And now, abracadabra, now I can turn on port security, okay? So I got port security, then I'm gonna do a switch port security. Can I just get away with PO? Yeah, love it. This version of iOS, again. Some other iOSs, there's multiple ports, so you can't do that, but in this case, there's only one port security, so only one port, so I can get away with PO. Max, and then I can give it the max address. I want to give it only one address. We'll make switch port security MAC address. we're going to make it sticky. And we'll do violation. We'll do shutdown. We'll do the most dramatic one. We'll get right to the point. All right, so now if I do show port security, unlike before, it's going to tell me that I have Ethernet port 02. It's going to shut down if it sees a security violation. Right now it's happy. If I do a show MAC address, which, by the way, I spent most of my time as a network engineer doing show MAC address because show, yeah, MAC. Yeah, address table. So right here, this is my MAC address table. I don't have anything set up with 02. Did I not bring it up? Oh, it hasn't sent any traffic out. That's what's going on. So let me do an auxiliary console. I'll ping something. Ping 192.168. These workstations in GNS3 do not send out a lot of data. So a lot of times their MAC addresses will get dropped out of the MAC address table because it's dynamic. So there you go. That's my MAC address. And it's called, notice it says static, and that's giving me a heads up that it's just it's not doing this on purpose, but when I see that, I'm like, oh, wait, something's weird. That MAC address has been locked in. And the reason why it's been locked in is because it's been stickied into it. So if I do show port security, there I am. And if I do show port security interface E02, I get more details. It tells me port security is enabled. It's going to shut down. And the last source address is on VLAN 1, and it's this MAC address right here. Now, if I do something crazy, like if I go in here and we're going to do this in the lab, I got to bring this up. There's too many things to click on. There we go. I'm going to delete that. I'll delete this. And then I go ahead and I plug that into 02. It was 02, right? Yeah, I think so. That one's set up. And now, oh, boom, boom. I'm going to see all these violations. You see all these messages. This is going to go to the syslog. It's telling me it's going to error disable state. And if I do that show port security again, it's going to tell me I have a violation. And that port, if I do a show in Ethernet 02, it's going to say it's down, down, and even further tell me it's error disabled. Okay, that port's been error disabled. In other words, nothing will work in that port. So even if I fix this mess and I say, hey, you idiot, you're not supposed to plug into that. You're supposed to plug into this. So we'll plug him back into 02. All right, cool. The original workstation's in there, right? Everything should be good. No, it's not, right? It's not good because it's in a shutdown state. So I actually have to then go in and re-enable it. And the quick, easy way to do that, and I remember some versions of iOS don't like you doing it this way, so keep that in mind, is to do a quick shut and no shut. And that should bring it back up.
So does that mean you can't just do no shut then, or you have to do shut?
I always did shut, no shut, so we can experiment with that. It always depends on the version of iOS and the actual, is it a Nexus? Is it a Catalyst? Is it, what the actual model number of the switch? They all act a little bit different, so and you get used to it. So the bulletproof way for me was to do a shut, no shut, right?
All right.
And I even then, bulletproof's not 100%. I do remember running into issues where shut, no shut didn't work. There was a different protocol. I had to turn off port security and turn it back on or something like that. So, but anyway, that's what it does. And if we had a trap set up right now, it would actually send a trap out to an SNMP server if we had that set up, but I don't. I've run over, but we do set that up in the practice, and I do, as you can see, it's easy to play with, right? And you can mess with it and have fun with it. It does change from model to model. Every iOS kind of behaves differently. But if you have the overall concept of what port security does is it looks at the MAC address. If it sees it, if you have it set to 1, if it sees a different MAC address, it's going to either do whatever the violation tells it to do, right? If I had it set up to do protect, then all that would happen is when I plugged admin 1 into that, I wouldn't have got all those error messages. I wouldn't have got anything in the log. But admin 1 all of a sudden just wouldn't work, right? The user plugged into it and says, hey, this port's not working. And then admin 2 plugged back into that port. Hey, it's working fine to me, right? So it depends on how much security you want. Right? And there's protect, and then the other mode was restrict, okay? So restrict will actually do the same thing. It'll drop the frames, but it will update my logs and let me know something funky happened, okay? So those are your three main strategies. As a matter of fact, that changed. In the early 2000s, they didn't have protect mode. They had restrict, shutdown, and another weird mode. I can't remember what it was. But so it is a bit of a moving target. But port security is here to stay. It's actually been kind of popular to deploy for voice over IP. However, voice over IP, anyway, there's lots. Port security is a popular option deployed. But again, it's, as a security expert would tell you, it's kind of easy to bypass because a lot of times people actually have the MAC addresses on the device itself. If you flip over your laptop, it often has your MAC address on there. So if I'm a hacker and I see a laptop plugged into a port, one of the first things I might do, and I know they have Cisco, and if I know they have port security, or if I'm assuming they have port security, I grab the MAC off that laptop, spoof it onto my device, whatever it is, and then plug it in that port. Port security is going to go, hey, okay, I like it. It's a MAC address, right? So it matches up. I don't care. So anyway, does that make sense? All right. I didn't have a summary for this because you know, we're getting through it. But this is the end of the lecture. Are there any questions about this lecture? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
I have one question with privilege levels.
Sure.
So is there possibly a level 0 privilege level? I know there's one.
It's funny because I said that because it's a 16 base number. I probably would not use it. So
Okay.
there is, well, we can find out, right? Let me get into the router. And I have to log in as the admin. For Inc. admin, and then it was pass for Inc. And then if I go config T, let's do that. We'll do username, guest, privilege level. Let's see if it'll take a 0 here. Oh, privilege level 0, pass, guest. Yes, you can do that. Yep, there's a privilege level 0. What that person can do, I can't tell you. We'll try it. Guest. Well, there you go. It won't let me into that mode. It won't let me into enable mode, right? And these are the commands. These are the commands available to me. I can either get the hell out, I can log out, I can ask for help, I can enable, which will get denied. Oh no, it allowed me to enable. Okay, interesting. Anyway, you can see this is kind of like a fun, ooh, cool, what can I do with this thing, right? Enable, but I can't show anything, can I? Let's see. Let's try showing a run or an interface. I'll do interface.
You should meet my dog.
Oh, your dog. I show wow, this is weird. Huh. Privilege level. Let me look at my privilege level. Show priv. I'm in 15 for some reason. That's weird. Who am I? Oh, show who am I. Sorry, I'm in Cisco World. I don't know. Oh, more. Shit, meant to be more. Oh, that was it. I don't know. So yeah, 0's weird. I don't know if I trust it. I'm not sure who I'm in as, but I pretty much I'm at privilege level 15. So something weird happened. I don't know if I logged in as guest or what, but it might be that privilege level I set at the line. This is con 0, and it's acting a little funky that regard too. But so there is a 0. You can put it in, and you can experiment with it. Again, privilege levels aren't used all that often, but it's something you can play with.
Professor, I have a question.
Data says your dog is cute, and now the dog took over. All right. So yeah, question. Go ahead, Mo.
Sorry for interrupting.
No.
You said privilege level 0. Does it have the least privilege or the high privilege?
15 should be the high privilege.
Okay, so 0 will have the least, right?
Yeah, in theory. I know privilege 1 certainly wouldn't. So if I go back in and I change that username, so I config username, and we'll change guest to privy 1. Also, part of this too is I've been messing with privilege levels on this router, and it's acting a little strange. But we'll keep playing with this. Guest, so guest privilege 1. Let me now log out and log in as guest again, and see if we get that same weird behavior. We kind of do. Yeah, something's funky going on here. When I do that enable, it's probably because I don't have an enable password on here. That's probably what's going on. Yeah, I think that's what's going on here. So ironically, yeah, I think that, as a matter of fact, I know what that's exactly what's going on. So enable password, no enable. We'll just do Cisco. That's the old-fashioned one. So let me try that again. And if I do guest, I do enable, and I don't know the password, now I'm stuck here. So what happened was before with privilege level 0 was it was locking me in this jail. The problem was I was an idiot jailer and I didn't have an enable password. So when they typed in enabled, they essentially opened up the door of the jail with no key, right? So that's what happened before. So now I'm at 0. I can't do anything, right? Actually, well, I wasn't at 0, was I? Can't show run, but let me. Oh, there we go. Now I'm at 15. So if I go config t and I do the username guest, we're having fun. This is a experimental time. I should stop recording, but whatever. Guest privilege. Someone might have a question that's watching this. If you are watching this, you don't give a crap, then feel free to stop watching. Privilege level 0, and then we're gonna do pass guest. Let me now exit out, and do guest. There we go. Now I'm in proper jail. So at privilege level 0 with an enable password or enabled secret password, which would be better because it would encrypt it or hash it on the config. Now I'm in proper jail because I can't enable because I don't know the password, assuming the password's good and that's Cisco like it is. I can only log out or exit or ask for help. That's all I can do. So there you go. So yeah, so there is a 0. It is fairly well locked down. What happened before was because I didn't have an enable password on the router, that's why you should always set an enable password. What happened was because there was an enable password, again, I put guest in jail with a privilege level 0, but then I didn't put it. I didn't lock the door, and there was no lock on the door. So it's a nice jail, but if there's no lock on the door, then who cares? And that's what happened there. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. Let me stop the recording, and then all right. Let's stop share. Bring this back. I have to stop recording here. All right.